The announcement of Prince George's future attendance at Eton College arrived as a single sentence released at noon. No press conference, no exclusive interviews, and no pre-briefed journalists accompanied the news. This stark, unadorned statement immediately drew a line of contrast with other recent communications from within the family. It was a fact presented plainly, devoid of explanation, embellishment, or public relations management. This is the same institution his father and uncle attended, a thread of continuity extending through generations of this specific family. The communication mirrored the quiet, understated manner in which the institution has historically conveyed matters it deems most significant. Delivered without ceremony, it implied the significance should be evident to any observer. This announcement coincided with a People magazine story, appearing in the same week, fed by unnamed insiders and timed with clear intent. That report stated Prince Harry would attend the Invictus Games, while Meghan, Archie and Lilibet would not accompany him. The official reason cited was security concerns. These two words, security concerns, have been consistently deployed across numerous contexts, applied to various occasions, absences and decisions. Consequently, they now function less as a specific, verifiable explanation and more as a broad response to questions that some prefer not to address directly. The implication is a perceived lack of trustworthiness, that any information obtained might be leveraged, sold, or used for personal gain, whether in public discourse or through media projects. This perspective asserts an inability to trust her. This analysis will examine what the contrast between these two announcements reveals when placed side by side. It will also consider Angela Levin's specific claims about Prince Harry's current state of mind and the reported evolution of his relationships with his family. We will explore the implications for Archie and Lilibet's upbringing in California compared to the childhood unfolding at Windsor, and the overarching theme connecting these developments: time. This refers to the duration of King Charles's remaining time with his grandchildren and the critical window it presents for building connections that, if missed, cannot be re-established from the beginning. We begin with the Eton announcement, as its handling provides insights the content alone does not, and because the contrast it establishes with the Sussex communication approach within the same week is notably pronounced. Kensington Palace issued a single sentence at noon. There was no prior journalist briefing, no strategically placed stories in sympathetic outlets to establish context, and no background discussions to frame the announcement favorably. An exclusive interview with a supportive publication did not accompany the news. The communication offered no explanation of Eton's significance, Prince George's attendance, or what it signifies for the family or the monarchy. The statement was simply, "Prince George will attend Eton College this September." This constituted the entirety of the communication. It stood independently, without external support, spin, or the typical public relations machinery modern figures often employ to shape public understanding. One perspective suggests that King Charles's initial strong desire to see his grandchildren and Prince Harry has now subsided. This is attributed to Harry's alleged poor conduct and a perceived dislike for Meghan, implying that engagement with the children would necessitate engagement with her, which is considered too challenging or unpleasant. This decision carries significant symbolic weight, referencing the same educational institution attended by his father and uncle. It represents a thread of continuity spanning generations of this family and the broader history of the monarchy, conveyed through a single sentence at midday. This contrasts sharply with how information regarding Archie and Lilibet is typically disseminated. Reports appear in People magazine attributed to unnamed insiders. They are the most infamous and coincides precisely with moments when public attention is directed elsewhere, such as a Garter ceremony, a Trooping the Colour balcony appearance, or a Wales family announcement that would otherwise command the narrative. The content is calibrated to elicit a specific emotional response from a targeted audience. The placement is intentional. Consistent anonymous sourcing has characterized these narratives across multiple stories over several years. These represent fundamentally different communication philosophies, not merely adjacent approaches within the same general domain. The Eton announcement frames Prince George's schooling as a private family decision, briefly and unceremoniously communicated to the public. In contrast, the Sussex approach treats family information, including details about their children, as content. This content is packaged, timed, and deployed for maximum narrative impact at strategically chosen moments. According to one account, Prince Harry reportedly asked Prince William if he could play a role in raising William's children, expressing a desire to spare them from similar difficulties he experienced. William's reported response was an unambiguous refusal, stating he did not want Harry involved. Neither communication approach is without precedent among public figures navigating intense scrutiny. However, the contrast made visible within the same 7-day period achieves something that no single announcement could alone. It illuminates a fundamental difference in what each side perceives the children to be. We turn now to Angela Levin's account. Her public statements regarding Prince Harry's current situation are sufficiently specific and consistently sourced from her extensive direct observation to warrant serious consideration. However, her interpretation is also pointed enough that it requires precision in distinguishing between the documented record and her analysis. Levin asserts that this individual has relentlessly influenced Prince Harry, allegedly fostering animosity towards his family and contributing to his reported mental health struggles. She posits that an individual in one's life can indeed create such adverse circumstances, and that, in her view, no effort was made to improve his condition. Levin has dedicated more time to closely studying Prince Harry than perhaps any other journalist or biographer currently covering the royal family. Her access to him during the research for her 2018 biography provided a detailed baseline understanding of his personality, his thought processes, his values, and his descriptions of his family. She has since used this insight to measure subsequent developments. In her framing, the disparity between the Prince Harry she knew then and the Prince Harry visible in recent years is not merely the natural evolution of an individual whose circumstances shifted. She contends it is something more specific and intentionally shaped. Her specific claim, stated without hedging or diplomatic qualification, is that Meghan did not merely alter Harry's external circumstances, his location, lifestyle, and institutional role. According to Levin, she fundamentally changed how Harry perceives those closest to him. She made him dislike them. This is the plain assertion from someone who knew him before the alleged transformation. Levin's perspective is that Meghan consistently seeks to prevail, irrespective of the perceived casualties, whether her father, former close friends, or first husband. She suggests there will always be such consequences in Meghan's life, posing the question of when Harry might become one. It is important to explicitly identify this as Angela Levin's opinion, as it represents a specific, pointed, and contested interpretation of events and motivations, offered by an individual who knew Prince Harry before these changes and has observed them since. This interpretation cannot be independently verified externally, nor is it an account the Sussex operation would accept as accurate. It is a conclusion derived from years of close observation and carries significant weight. However, the observable record supports a version of the change Levin describes, even if her specific framing of its cause constitutes her interpretation rather than established fact. The Prince Harry who spoke of his family with warmth and visible loyalty in the years preceding Meghan, who by multiple accounts was genuinely and deeply emotionally connected to his brother and the institution he served, and who carried himself with self-deprecating humor and genuine commitment to his causes. This individual has undergone a genuine and significant transformation when compared to the Prince Harry who published Spare granted the Oprah interview and has reportedly not had a substantive conversation with Prince William in years. Something demonstrably changed. Levin addresses what produced this change and whether its origins were internal or externally influenced. Her answer that it was deliberately and progressively shaped externally through isolation and reframing has been articulated in various forms over the years by multiple individuals who knew Harry before Meghan. This is also the interpretation most directly disputed by the Sussex operation. It is not possible to definitively state which reading is correct. However, Levin's reading is consistent with observable patterns, and she articulates it with the conviction of someone who knew the individual in question prior to the reported change. Levin also makes the additional claim that Prince Harry is genuinely fearful of his wife, a fear that, in her view, has practical consequences for decisions concerning his children, his movements, and his family relationships. This, again, is her interpretation and cannot be confirmed externally. What is observable is a pattern of outcomes, separate schedules, the Invictus trip without his family, 88 days without a shared photograph, the Jordan footage, and the Vanity Fair manuscript report. The question remains whether fear or another factor explains this pattern. Levin posits that it is genuine, practically consequential fear that shapes decisions regarding children, movements, and family contact. The observable pattern over the past 12 months aligns with her reading, though it is not exclusively explained by it. While fear could explain the pattern, so could strategic calculation, genuine estrangement, or a combination of these factors. The interpretation one adopts depends on the weight assigned to Levin's direct observations. Now we turn to Archie and Lilibet, as this aspect of the story carries the longest-term consequences and the least potential for management through public relations strategy. Archie is 7 and Lilibet is 5. These are the formative ages when memories are established in ways that often persist into adult life, unlike more deliberate or conscious recollections. The summers, family occasions, and the casual, unremarkable moments around a dinner table or in a garden, which cumulatively shape a settled sense of belonging and identity, are being formed in real time. These are taking shape in Montecito. They have each other, their parents, the California sunshine, Montecito's particular privilege and aesthetic, and the highly curated public image that frames their family life in warm tones. This is often presented through photographs released at moments selected for maximum strategic value, rather than merely to share an event. What individuals familiar with this family suggest they lack is the organic, unglamorous, and irreplaceable texture of extended family. This includes cousins who tease, argue, and provide a permanent reference point for identity, or a grandfather who can simply be their grandfather without every encounter necessitating advanced coordination, management, and conditions set by others. King Charles is 76 years old and is managing a cancer diagnosis which, by the most recent reporting, is not in remission. This is a medical and temporal fact, not tabloid speculation. The window for Archie and Lilibet to forge a genuine lived relationship with their grandfather, not a managed photographic encounter or a conditional visit planned months in advance, but the kind of ordinary, repeated contact through which such bonds naturally form, is not infinite. It is actively narrowing. Unlike many aspects of this family narrative, this narrowing cannot be reversed by a press release or a strategic interview. Prince Harry comprehends this specific form of loss with a precision and gravity that few others carry. At 12 years old, his mother died. He understands precisely what it means to exhaust time with a parent before a relationship is fully expressed or repaired. He knows the feeling of reaching for a conversation that cannot occur because the individual is no longer present. The parallel between his own childhood loss and the relationship his children are reportedly not building with their grandfather, a grandfather who, by multiple accounts, genuinely wishes to know them, is not subtle. It is directly apparent to anyone familiar with his history, and it is almost certainly evident to him in ways he cannot entirely disregard. Yet by every observable indicator, no movement is occurring to bridge this distance. Summer approaches. The calendar fills with events and appearances that do not include a confirmed family meeting. The Invictus trip proceeds without the children. The People magazine story manages their absence narrative without requiring anyone to offer an on-the-record explanation. The clock, meanwhile, maintains its immutable pace, unaffected by any press release or lack thereof. Now, let us consider the royal family's week in contrast, as the visual juxtaposition itself provides significant insight without requiring additional commentary. This included Trooping the Colour, featuring the balcony appearance, and the crowd filling the mall from Buckingham Palace. Centuries of tradition were compressed into a single image of a family on the same balcony where generations have stood. Then came the Garter ceremony at Windsor, with Charles and Camilla in full ceremonial regalia, entering St. George's Chapel, a tradition observed in that specific location since the 14th century. Prince William, who by credible accounts finds some older ceremonies somewhat disconnected from contemporary relevance and has quietly consulted advisors on modernizing the monarchy's ceremonial profile for his future reign, still appeared in full regalia, looking composed and sharp. This demonstrated his understanding of the immediate requirements of his role. He is understood from observing his father navigate these ceremonies precisely what the role demands from its performer. Catherine and Sophie were present and composed on the sidelines. Reports indicated King Charles appeared notably better than in recent months, suggesting genuine improvement rather than the performance for cameras. Then came the Eton sentence at noon, standing unaccompanied. Against this visual backdrop, the People magazine story concerning the Invictus attendance, fed by unnamed insiders, and timed for the same week explaining that Harry would attend but Meghan, Archie and Lilibet would not, was received differently than in another context. The explanation of security concerns resonated differently. The image of a father attending a veterans event alone, while his children remain across an ocean from a grandfather, visibly managing the final stage of his illness, landed distinctly. This was not due to any change in individual facts, but because the week had established the visual context that made all subsequent information more clearly understood. One branch of this family announced a 12-year-old school enrollment in a single sentence at noon, then proceeded. The other branch managed an Invictus Games attendance through People magazine insider briefings, with unnamed sources establishing a narrative that allowed the story to surface without direct accountability. This visible contrast within the same 7-day period conveyed more collectively than either announcement communicated individually. The question of Meghan's alleged jealousy is one Levin addresses most directly and controversially. This point requires careful handling, with a clear understanding that it falls within one observer's interpretation of motivations, which cannot be verified by anyone outside the marriage. Her specific reading posits that a significant factor in the Sussex departure was Meghan's inability to accept Catherine's structural position as Princess of Wales and future Queen. This role, in Levin's framing, is permanent and unassailable, one that could never be overshadowed by any action Meghan might undertake within the institution. Catherine's position as Princess of Wales and future Queen holds non-negotiable precedence within the institution. Levin contends Meghan could not envision a royal life for herself that did not exist in Catherine's institutional shadow, irrespective of her individual qualities or achievements. Prince Harry himself once described Catherine as the sister he always wished he had. This is a documented quote from a genuine interview. What transpired with that specific sentiment, the warmth and loyalty it conveyed when it changed, and what propelled that change is information only Harry possesses from within. What is observable is that the sentiment once existed, and the relationship it described no longer operates in any functional capacity. What additional specific detail from Levin's account warrants direct discussion, both because it generated considerable reaction upon surfacing, and because it intersects the questions of alleged jealousy and William's relationship. Levin has reported that Prince Harry at one point asked to assume a substantive role in raising George, Charlotte and Louis, seeking involvement in their upbringing. Prince William's reported response, according to her account, was an unambiguous refusal. When Harry reportedly pressed the issue, William's position was stated plainly: "Keep your distance, I do not want you involved." This is presented as Levin's account, derived from her close, years-long observation, rather than a single conversation or document, and it is not presented as an independently verifiable confirmed fact. However, if accurate, and if the observable evidence regarding the state of the William-Harry relationship aligns with the conclusion it implies, then it provides specific insight into William's assessment of Harry at that juncture. This was not a temporary cooling off, subject to reconsideration once emotions settled. Nor was it a diplomatic pause awaiting further developments. It was, rather, a firm and deliberate refusal, rooted in a trust assessment already concluded, requiring no additional evidence for its maintenance. This perspective is consistent with all other aspects Levin describes about William's current stance, and with all observable indicators regarding the brothers' relationship since Spare was published, the silence their separate public trajectories, and the absence of any confirmed joint appearances or communications. Levin's conclusion that the departure was ultimately driven more by the dynamic with Catherine than by narratives of press coverage or institutional racism is her opinion. It constitutes an interpretation, not a provable claim. However, it is an interpretation that a significant number of individuals within the institution during that period have expressed in various forms independently of each other. Furthermore, the specific observation that Harry's relationship with Catherine visibly and genuinely changed a relationship he once described with the distinct warmth of someone who had found the sibling connection he always desired remains one of the more consistent threads in accounts from those who observed both during the transition years. Whether Levin's specific framing of the cause is accurate is a question that cannot be answered here. However, that something significant altered in that relationship is not disputed. This is the summation of these points. Transparency about the interpretive process is more useful than presenting a conclusion as if it arrived unconstructed. The observable facts are these. Prince George's Eton attendance was announced in a single sentence at noon. The Invictus trip occurred without the children, explained by security concerns, which have become a broad response to multiple inquiries. King Charles is managing cancer not in remission, and no confirmed family meeting is scheduled for the summer. Garter week provided the clearest visual contrast between the two family branches within the same 7-day period. Trooping, Garter, Eton, and the People magazine story, all in sequence. Levin has presented specific and pointed claims concerning Harry's psychological state, the reported transformation of his family relationships, and Meghan's alleged role in shaping both this transformation and the current limitations on Harry's actions. The interpretive layer applied here suggests that these facts, when considered together, describe a situation where multiple critical windows are narrowing simultaneously. This includes the window for King Charles to know his grandchildren, for Prince Harry to reconcile with his father before his health deteriorates further, and for Archie and Lilibet to build any genuine relationship with the family they were born into but are being raised apart from. The daily choices, the announcements at noon, the People magazine stories, the unaccompanied Invictus trips, and summers without confirmed visits are determining whether these windows will be utilized before they close, or whether they will simply close unaddressed. The most challenging aspect of this narrative, often overlooked in discussions of communication strategies, public relations approaches, and institutional contrasts, is that the children at its center did not make any of the choices that created their present circumstances. Archie is 7, Lilibet is 5. They internalize the version of reality presented to them. They construct their identities on the foundation provided and develop their understanding of their family from what is shown, rather than from independent observation. Eventually, when they are old enough to examine the record, they will read what was written, watch what was broadcast, and form their own conclusions about the adults who shaped their early years. That reckoning is not yet present, but it is approaching. Unlike press cycles, PR strategies, or managed announcements, that specific clock cannot be controlled. What is your assessment? Is there still a scenario where Archie and Lilibet can meaningfully connect with their grandfather before time renders the question moot? Is the current distance structural and self-reinforcing? Or does a window still exist that someone could choose to utilize? Furthermore, what is your interpretation of Levin's account of Harry's situation? Does the observable pattern align with her description, or does the evidence suggest a different conclusion? Share your perspective in the comments below. To ensure you do not miss our next analysis, subscribe to Palace Insider. Liking this video supports the channel's work.